and I'm also a research person at CHMS. I'm introducing Heidi Hegel, who's in charge of the prices of building at CHMC. We will be co-chairing this session. We will discuss several themes which reflect the significance of housing in the lives of Canadians. I will give the floor to Heidi, who will show us the program for the afternoon. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you and welcome everyone. It's great to see a wonderful turnout for this afternoon's first session of the 2015 NHRC. This is the housing data session. We have 5 excellent presentations for you this afternoon. We had a very interesting discussion this morning with all of the member updates, lots of questions and comments, so we anticipate the same for this afternoon. So because we have such a full agenda, we'll jump right in. I just want to remind everyone that for those who can't be here in person, this session is also being live video webcast in both languages, so that we're reaching all stakeholders interested in Canadian housing data and research. We'll also be providing the webcast recording of the presentations as video clips for viewing after the meetings, and they will be available on the NHRC website. So before we jump right in with the first presentation, I'll just remind you of a couple of housekeeping items. Please ensure that your BlackBerries and phones are turned off so as not to disturb the reception of the interpretation. We do have, for those just joining us this afternoon, we have the simultaneous translation. So if you need, just make sure you pick up a headset. For questions and discussions, we'll ask you to please state your name and your organization when you use the microphone. And finally, I'll just remind everyone there is an evaluation form in the NHRC booklet, and you might find it useful to try to do the evaluation as you go along so that all the presentations are fresh in your mind. And your feedback, as always, is very important to assess the effectiveness of the meeting and to make improvements as necessary. So, without further delay, I will ask Sophie to introduce our first presenter.
I'm very happy to introduce to you our first speaker, Deborah Kraus. She is a manager at BC Housing. She's got more than 20 years in experience in research on affordable housing policy at all levels of government and community organizations and the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. In 2010, she received a Simon Fraser University degree. She's also a doctorate in jurisprudence at the Carleton Law School in Toronto. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you very much. And, I'm very happy to be here today and to tell you about the Seniors Housing Intentions Survey. This research was commissioned by BC Housing in partnership with the BC Office of Housing and Construction Standards, which includes the Housing Policy Branch. And we received financial support from CMHC, and the research was conducted by Sentis Market Research. So the purpose of the study simply was to learn more about the types of housing and supports that are needed in BC to accommodate seniors. And this is a very important issue in BC because the population of adults 55 years and older in BC has been increasing steadily from just over 20% in 1996 to close to 30% in 2011 and projected to be up to 36% in 2030. So the study included adults who were 55 years and over. We conducted 700 telephone interviews in the summer, in June and July of this summer. Originally, we were just going to study 4 northern communities in BC, so Kitimat, Port Edward, Prince Rupert, and Terrace. But with CMHC funding, we were able to go province-wide. And that also made it possible for us to analyze the results looking at urban and rural differences. So altogether, we did 400 interviews province-wide and 300 interviews in those specific northern communities. So the specific objectives of the study were looking ahead over the next 5-year horizon. We wanted to find out, do older seniors or older adults plan to move or stay in their homes as well as in their communities? We also wanted to find out what form of housing seniors are going to be looking for, and what kind of support services they may need or want. And also we want to look at what are the key factors that are likely to influence seniors in their decisions about where they're planning to live. So in terms of some of our key findings, how likely are seniors to move in the next 5 years? We found that province-wide, about a quarter of the seniors said that they would move, and that was probably or definitely move. 19% said they might or might not move, and 56%, so more than half, said that they would not move. And about half of those were definitely not going to move, and half were probably not going to move. There were some differences in terms of the age breakdown of seniors. And so seniors who were age 65 to 74, they expressed the highest definite intention of moving in the next 5 years, whereas seniors who are 75 years and older were most likely to say that they would definitely not be moving. And one of our interpretations of that is that the seniors who are 75 and older have likely already made their retirement move. Then in terms of where seniors are going to move to, province-wide, more than half of the seniors said that they would stay in their current municipality. And 21% said that they would move outside their municipality but stay within their region. And then only 13% said that they were planning to move outside their region but stay within BC. One of the significant differences looking at the results was seniors in the north were more likely to say that they're going to be moving outside of their communities. That was true for seniors in the north as well as seniors in the rural communities. So those ones are more likely to move away from their home communities. So in terms of the kind of housing, if seniors are to move in the next 5 years, they were most interested in a single-family home, followed by an apartment. As well, most of the seniors would want a 2-bedroom home, followed by a 3-bedroom home. Across the province, about half of the respondents said that they wanted to purchase their home. But there was a difference in terms of the age breakdown of seniors. So the younger seniors want to buy their home, but seniors 75 and older are least likely to want to purchase a home. As well, there was interest in moving into a retirement community or assisted living, and about 1/3 of the seniors who are 75 years and older expressed interest in a retirement home or assisted living. So we asked seniors to, or the people who responded to this survey, to indicate what would be important to them in making a decision about where they wanted to live or were going to live. And so 74% of the respondents said that having a home that is easy and safe to get around is very important in making a decision about where they would live. So that was the issue that was most important to, or very important to most of the respondents. And then 66% said that remaining in their own home rather than moving to a retirement community was very important to them. Also very important was the cost of housing and proximity to family and friends. So being close to amenities and public transit was a higher priority for seniors who are in the metro, or what we considered the urban area. And being close to hospitals and other health services was identified as a higher priority for seniors in rural communities. As well, home maintenance and upkeep was more important a more important issue for seniors who are in the northern communities. So looking at some of the issues that came out of the research, I think one thing that struck us was the importance of accessible housing for seniors. So as I just mentioned before, 74% of the respondents ranked accessible housing as very important in terms of making a decision about where we're going to live. But at the same time, about half of all of the seniors said that their home was difficult to get around. So, and then another important point around this was that most of the seniors would prefer to move rather than to modify their home. So among those whose homes were difficult to get around in, less than a quarter said that they would be likely to modify their homes. So it seems like that's going to be a significant issue in terms of the likelihood of seniors having to move out of their homes. And one of the reasons why the seniors said that they probably would not modify their homes was because they thought it would be too difficult. I guess their homes it's going to be too difficult to make the necessary changes, and also too expensive. In terms of the difference between province-wide and the north, seniors who are living in the north, a higher percentage of them, 55%, said that their homes would be difficult to get around in for someone with a mobility issue. So in terms of health, we found that the vast majority, more than three-quarters of the seniors in the survey have no health conditions, have no health or mobility issues. So that's the good news, is that most of the respondents are in good health. But seniors who are respondents in the north or outside of the metro areas, which we called the rural and satellite communities, were more likely to report a health or mobility issue rather than seniors in the metro area. And what we found was that seniors in the north and in rural communities were twice as likely as seniors in the metro area to report having both the health and mobility issue. And incomes is another issue. So, and I think this is consistent with other research as well. But seniors with incomes of $75,000 or more reported lower incidences of health and mobility issues, whereas respondents with incomes of less than $30,000 had a higher incidence reporting of health and mobility issues. And then I guess another, consistent with people being in good health, very few seniors are using support services. The most commonly used services were housekeeping and laundry services, 16%, and transportation, which is 5%. So that was among all the respondents, but when we looked at among the respondents who had health or mobility issues, then it was 26% were using housekeeping and laundry services, and 15% were using transportation services. And transportation services were things to, or services to help seniors get to appointments, shopping, that kind of services. Another thing that we found was that very few of the seniors said that they needed a service but were unable to get it. So 5% of all seniors said that they were that they had needed a service but were unable to get it, and then that would increase to 13% of seniors with a health condition or mobility issues who had wanted a service but were unable to get it. So those are the main findings from our survey, and we're expecting the findings to inform our policy and program development issues. But I think for one of the key messages or key issues that we're going to be looking at is the issue of the accessible housing, so that we found, and I think, again, this is consistent with other research, is that most seniors want to stay in their homes. Most are in a single-family home and want to stay living in a single-family home. Accessibility is going to be a major issue that's going to force people to make a change in their housing. And again, half of the seniors say their homes will not be able to accommodate them if they have an accessibility issue. So I think one of the things that this points to is looking at the design of single-family homes and whether or not they can be made more accessible, I guess, just to start with in terms of any new homes that are being developed. So those are the results of our survey, and certainly open to your thoughts about that and any questions that you have about that.
Merci, Deborah. Maintenant, j'aimerais vous donner la parole.
Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to people in the room or people on the web if you have questions. So please give us your name, which organization you are with, before you ask your question.
David Kraus, Canadian Home Builders Association. It's a very interesting study, and it, I think, take the top off the question, the topic. I just wanted to go a little bit further, maybe, and say it would be really good for you to talk with a selection of renovators. Mm-hmm. Have you thought of that? Because I've talked to one of them who specializes in adaptability and accessibility renovations, and he says many seniors say to him, "Hey, you want me to spend $6,000 on this? I only bought it for $13,000, for goodness sake."
That's a good point, actually.
And the second thing, I guess, is I assume you are going to look at actual moves that happen. I went through this my own father in BC, because there's a paradox in your findings, I think, which is that those who say they don't want to move in 75 plus are actually those who are going to be more likely to be forced to move for various reasons. So I mean, those are just two comments, but it would be interesting to know what your next steps might be.
Mm-hmm. Well, we haven't thought of we haven't thought of our next steps in terms of the research, but I think our CMHC partners are interested in taking a deeper look at the data, as well as we're thinking about this as a starting point and also a starting point for discussion. I guess one of the reasons for the study was communities are starting to develop housing plans. And so this was kind of a starting point. But I think that's a very good point about thinking maybe more about the potential for renovations. There may be more potential than people realize. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Ariel?
So I'm just wondering what the current housing situation was of the seniors you called. You said most of them were homeowners, or was that?
Yeah, the majority were homeowners, and the majority were living in single-family homes. And then in the northern communities, I think a higher percentage were in single-family homes, whereas in the more metro areas, a higher percentage, there was more of them were living in apartments.
Were any of them in public or social housing?
Some were, and I can look at the percentages, yes, but some were, and there was some interest in that kind of housing as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Juste confirmer que
Are there any questions out there on the internet? Would there be any other questions from people in the room? Duncan? Duncan Handel?
I guess this is just an observation that we've often hear that seniors prefer to age in their homes, but I guess now we say that with a caveat. You know, they prefer to age in their homes, but they won't if they run into trouble and or they're faced with a big renovation cost in order to stay in their homes. So in other words, it's not unconditional. They will move if they have to. They're not anchored there. They're not going to throw all sorts of money at the problem. That seems, or the staying in their home. That seems to be the conclusion of your study.
Yes, I think that is one of the conclusions, that they will move if they have to, and that the accessibility is going to be a turning point for people. But the other thing that I think struck me looking at some of the older studies about seniors is there did seem to be a greater interest in in assisted living and retirement communities, and so that also suggests to me that if there are options available in communities, that's something that the seniors would think about. There's been a lot of new retirement communities that have been developed, and so if we build them, they will come, and that might be an option in the north, for example, rather than people having to move out of their communities. They may be able to stay there if there are those kinds of options available.
David?
Just a supplementary, you mentioned it in your presentation, but you don't have the capacity and the data you've collected to check whether, quote, they've made their move already versus there's. I guess the concern I would have is that I think that there will be quite a different generational approach, and the reality is, maybe if you've got boomers who've already moved, it will give a different thing than a different result than the 75 plus that have moved. That's all. That's a question.
That's a good point, and that's something that we could have a double look at in the data. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Donc, c'est pas...
Okay, if there is no more question, thank you, Deborah.